to justify decisions to pay little, if any, tax. Corporate behemoths have grown ever larger, ever more dominant in their sectors, ever more detached from their customers, and ever more determined to bend rules and evade justice. We've seen profiteering, for example, of major supermarkets in recent years, who give their suppliers, primary producers, like the farmers and growers in my constituency, very often a raw deal. We've seen them distort the food chain and yet take advantage of the disruption brought by the pandemic and the war in the Ukraine. Indeed, the pandemic exacerbated the power of greedy globalists. Unite, the trade union, has highlighted that following research of 17,000 big firms, average profit margins have soared by 30% compared with the pre-pandemic period. In 2022, the profits of the 350 largest companies in Britain increased by around 89% compared to pre-pandemic levels. Contrast that, if you will, Madam Deputy Speaker, with the plight of smaller businesses, with ever greater costs and ever more unfair competition from their giant competitors. But if the claims of the globalists, do you remember them? The sort of people who addicted to modernity and to change, if the claims of those enthusiastic globalists that the world will be a better place for their activities were true, who has really benefited? In an economy where standards of living are falling, where productivity has stalled, and where the state grows ever bigger in the face of rising worklessness, the only beneficiaries of globalisation, it seems to me, have been a few people at the top of those corporate businesses. It's not monopolies that we need, it's a multiplicity of businesses. Start-up firms, local firms, firms that innovate, that engage in new activities in the economy rather than cement existing practices. Let's give those kind of businesses what they need. They need greater freedom, whilst the big corporate monoliths need to be regulated so they don't exploit the marketplace which they dominate. Think for a moment of the banks. Now, I have a vision of banking, I hope you might too, Madam Deputy Speaker, rooted in a sort of Dad's Army approach, a Captain Mannering figure, committed to his community, in close touch with his customers, caring about the business which he ran. And that wasn't so. That wasn't just. That wasn't just a fiction. In my younger years, I well remember going to a bank as a young man and asking if I could borrow £500 to buy an old car. I was a student at the time. The manager, a bit like Captain Mannering in character, invited me in, gave me a glass of sherry, and interrogated me for half an hour, and eventually said, yes, I think we can probably lend you the £500. Imagine that scene now. At best, you'd have an online connection with someone remotely situated,
you
possibly
get a car
even
for 500 quid there, John.
I think the Honourable Member for Chingford and Woodford Green was referring to the £500 that he still owes me from the days when I used to work for him. But the point is that nowadays the connection between customers and suppliers has become at best detached and at worst remote. Now you'd have some, as I say, conversation with some remotely situated person who had known nothing about you or your circumstances and probably care.
Give away.
And probably care less.
Give away?
I will happily give way. Is it about the £500?
Yeah. without interest. Can I just say to my honourable friend, I agree with him, and I also agree with something else, which is people don't realise that the really big multinationals, these global businesses, like, for example, Amazon, they don't really make their profits on what they sell you. What they do is they hold your data, and that's what they really sell subsequently, where they make their money and their profit. Your data derives you no income at all, and they make a lot of money on the back of that. And so trying to break that process down and to make things more local, you have to start at what we've been all complicit with is the idea of getting something for nothing. It not for nothing, it costs.
Well, my right-hand friend, as ever, makes an apposite comment, because the trading of data by big businesses has become a business in itself in the way that he's set out. We need, in contrast, firms to practice responsibility, not to parrot slogans and virtue signal. They concentrate power and wealth with little regard for the community in which they sit, or even the country in which they're situated. I give way to my friend.
Can I commend the Honourable Gentleman for South Holland and the Deepings? Right honourable member is a friend of us all in this chamber. We all love him because of the wisdom he brings to this chamber. The right honourable member is a good friend of Northern Ireland as well, and I say this because he will be very pleased when he hears about what we're doing in Northern Ireland, the better regulation strategy, which requires departments to undertake and publish a regulatory impact assessment when considering new policy proposals or amendments to existing policy which may impact on businesses, and carry out a micro business test to assess the impact on businesses of fewer than 5 employees. But does the right honourable member, understanding what we're doing in Northern Ireland, not agree that with increased regulation must come increased cooperation to secure better business which benefits us all? The very thing that the right honourable gentleman is trying to achieve.
Well, again, as ever, the honourable gentleman makes an apposite and worthy contribution to our consideration. And I simply say this to the Minister. Government has a lot of power in all kinds of ways. It certainly has the power to regulate the kind of unfair practices that I've begun to set out, but it also has a power as a customer. And government procurement has never, under successive governments, been used as well as it might be to support British businesses, and particularly British small businesses. My challenge to the Minister is, let's look at that again. Let's look at how government, as a huge customer of all kinds of businesses, can support small and medium-sized firms. Decades of non-intervention, driven by the mistaken belief in the triumph of liberal economics, resulted in extraordinary numbers of foreign takeovers of British firms. It's also a matter of who owns these corporate giants, and overseas companies owning our critical national infrastructure. Now, the government recently approved the Vodafone 3 merger. 3 is owned by a Hong Kong-based conglomerate. I wonder how closely the Competition and Markets Authority looked into the owners and leadership of 3's parent company, the CK Group. I wonder if that group, and perhaps the Minister can inform us tonight, has ties with the Chinese state. This merger mustn't become yet another corporate bonanza for shareholders at the expense of our national interest and the common good. Mr. Speaker, I sought this debate in particular following a meeting with a constituent of mine who was previous a Vodafone franchisee, along with others from across the country who I met. And I want to say to you, Madam Deputy Speaker, I am mindful of a legal case in which those franchisees of Vodafone are involved, and I have taken advice and amended my speech heavily as a result of that advice from the Table Office. But I do think it's important to set some of the context in the broad terms that I've described that relates to the behaviour of large companies that adopt the franchise model. I give way to the Honourable Gentleman.
I thank the Honourable Member for giving way, and I congratulate him on securing this debate. Madam Deputy Speaker, can I refer to my register of interest, in particular trade union membership? I wonder if he shares my view that the merger between Vodafone and 3 will have real consequences in terms of pricing for customers, but also job losses here in Britain.
Well, that is certainly the risk, and I think mergers more generally need to be looked at closely. It's why we have the Competition and Markets Authority, and why these things are indeed considered in the terms I described. More recently, of course, as my right honourable friend from New Forest will know, as a former member of the ISC, which I remain a member of, government introduced other legislation in respect of security and large businesses and mergers and all of similar related matters, because it's important to gauge the national interest in all kinds of ways when one considers business activity. But I'll say no more about that because it will be digressing from my main theme, although I can see an eagerness to intervene. I give way to my neighbour.
I'm most grateful to the right honourable gentleman for giving way, indeed, and he makes a powerful case about the differences between small businesses, entrepreneurs, franchisees and the big corporates. Does he accept my concern that franchisees suffer the risk of essentially corporate bullying from the mega companies, the likes potentially of Vodafone, and they don't have any form of regulatory umbrella comfort? And that entities like the British Franchise Association may sound effective, but are actually toothless in the face of such corporate bullying.
As ever, because I've worked closely on this subject with the right honourable gentleman, he and I are on the same page. He's absolutely right that franchising can be used as a method to exaggerate the power of the business at the heart of the franchise and to weaken the position of franchisees. And my assertion is that is common and is particular in the case of Vodafone.
Can I just...
I've got two more. I'm going to take the honourable gentleman and then
I'll be brief.
That's why I run in the front.
I thank the right honourable gentleman for giving way, and I congratulate him for securing this very important adjournment debate. Like him, I've met Vodafone franchisees, both in my constituency, particularly the Chesley Street franchise holder, former franchise holder, who I met again today. I'm grateful to him for setting out the legal advice that he's received about the ongoing case. So I will be careful about what I say, other than to say I think there are major corporates that treat their franchisees very badly, that sign them up on one set of terms, one rate card, and then change the goalposts. And then when people dissent and complain about that, they find their franchises withdrawn and they lose their investment when they have put a great deal into that corporate giant. And I think that this is a matter that in the near future, is going to require some ministerial attention. But I thank the right honourable gentleman very much for bringing this to the House's attention.
Wait for my right honourable friend.
I don't mean to detain you very long, but I actually very much supported the union's position on this. I thought this was wrong at the time. And when you look at an organisation like CK, without straying into the issues of the bids, this organisation from China has links now and control over UK power networks, Northumbrian Water, Wales and West Utilities, Evershot Rail. It's intriguing, the network that they have, but hugely around the power networks and the communications networks. All of those are now falling into the hands of conglomerates that have nothing to do with the UK, but government from a different country. And this is the big problem that we face. It's not that you don't like big businesses, but it's just that so often now these big businesses operate from outside of our legal empowerment.
I'm grateful to my friend who takes a great interest in these matters, and it's precisely why I posed the earlier question to the Minister about how closely he and others had looked at that merger. I say no more than that about it, but it does seem to me to be a legitimate question to ask. Were those things considered in this particular case, and how are they generally considered? For if my right honourable friend is right, that there are threats that result from this, under existing legislation and regulation, it's perfectly possible for government to become involved in these kind of commercial affairs. I will give way once more and then make a little more progress.
Madam Speaker, can I put on record that I omitted the use of right honourable in my earlier intervention, so can I correct that? But also the right honourable gentleman for Chingford made a very important point in terms of bigger businesses operating outside of the UK, perhaps in some cases abusing their position. Can I also, on a lighter note, encourage him to join a trade union? I'd be happy to supply him with a membership form.
Well, I'm again grateful to the honourable gentleman. It seems to me there is a mood across the House tonight that more must be done. Yeah. And this Minister, an experienced member of this House, will have gathered that mood could easily, from this small beginnings, become a crescendo, which might endanger the very safety of his office and the government as a whole. So let's hope this is the beginning of a journey, both for the government and the minister, towards a regime that counters the very things that have been described by members from across the House. Now, I will, because I'm a long-standing friend of the Right Honourable Gentleman, I will certainly give way to him, and then I must make progress.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm very grateful to him. The Right Honourable Gentleman is doing the House a favour in his work tonight. I should first declare an interest in that I have a close relative who works for the CMA, and I don't wish to comment on competition and mergers, more to ask him perhaps to work with me to support the government's work. I believe ministers are shortly to do some further work to offer greater support to small businesses, both in terms of opening up government procurement, but other matters as well. And I certainly, in my own constituency, like him, am a very keen supporter of small business, and my own small business competition has provided a great deal of recognition for businesses, whether they're repairing small musical instruments through to local florists, to people providing other services, and indeed many other forms of small business. So I do want to commend the broad thrust of his work tonight, although I don't want to comment on the CMA.
Thank you. I'm very grateful for the Honourable Gentleman's support. Now, during the pandemic, Madam Speaker, the UK Government introduced a business rates relief package, which allowed businesses with commercial leases to claim relief on their business rates. That was designed to help firms, physical stores, compensate for lost footfall during lockdowns, and it was an essential lifeline to those smaller businesses. This was automatically applied to businesses through local councils. From the 11th of March 2020 to June 21, the relief was at 100%, with no cash cap, and ratepayers with more than one property were entitled to relief for each eligible property. Franchisees were eligible to receive this relief, and it would have been automatically applied to stores operated by companies like Vodafone and others, and not through the franchise programme. It's worth noting that some corporations that benefit from that scheme, such as Tesco, although I hold no candle for Tesco generally, by the way, have since returned the money to the government. Now, the question is whether Vodafone how Vodafone used that money. Did it achieve its original purpose? And I'd be interested in the Minister's answer to that question. Or was it redirected in some way that was out of tune with the government's intention and the proper purpose? It's worth noting, as I say, that this wasn't only available to Vodafone, but to all those organisations that had franchises, and I wonder how other organisations handled this matter and how that compares with the circumstances surrounding Vodafone. The important thing to recall, to remember, to consider as we debate these matters, the franchisees are small business owners with families. It was important to them. Business rate relief was therefore of huge significance and made a meaningful difference to people, as was intended by the Right Honourable Member for Richmond Northallerton, who was Chancellor at the time. The government's stated purpose for the COVID-19 business rate relief was to assist small businesses to carry on trading at a financially difficult time where profits in bricks and mortar was much reduced. Yet the question is, was that reality? The fact that the government later introduced caps on the relief indicates that it was intended to help small businesses, those to whom £100,000 makes a great difference, not to subsidise large globalist corporations with hundreds of stores and access to other types of relief. So I wonder what assessment the Minister has made of how this kind of funding was used during the COVID pandemic. Too often, franchisees' payments by those who franchise them are cut drastically and with little or no explanation. Contracts are often terminated with just a few days' notice, with stores repossessed with little notice, often without valid reasons for doing so, leaving debts and loans to be repaid with no income. Franchisees claim that they face fines, clawbacks, grossly disproportionate to errors in question, in some cases errors that led to fines were results of failures in major corporation systems, yet the financial burden is often unfairly placed on franchisees. And communications raising serious concerns, though made, are often unanswered, and pressing issues ignored for long periods of time, leaving franchisees without support or resolution to their problems. Moreover, it's emerged that in the case of Vodafone, whistleblowers have warned of a series of senior Vodafone executives that scores of its franchise store owners face financial ruin. So I'd like to ask the Minister what steps the government is taking to regulate corporate businesses' relationship with their franchisees. We're not speaking, as I said, of powerful businesses with deep legal departments and balance sheets to absorb losses. Ordinary people, mothers, fathers, sons, daughters, who saw an opportunity when they became a franchisee to build a meaningful business of their own under the banner of a global household name, to make a difference to their family, but also to their community, to the towns in which they're situated. People with their savings, their homes, and their reputations on the line, because they believe that a franchise agreement with a company like Vodafone, but there are others too, would be safe and secure. As I said, the Competition and Markets Authority last month confirmed the merger of Vodafone and Three. So can the Minister confirm the matter of the problems with franchisees were discussed ahead of that merger being approved? Indeed, more broadly, can such a merger really be said to benefit the British public, given its forecast to cost 1,600 UK jobs? And evidence from overseas shows that countries with fewer mobile phone operators tend to charge higher prices to consumers. Can the Minister confirm what steps the government is taking to investigate allegations of inappropriate use of government relief using during the COVID pandemic? Specifically, in relation to businesses and franchisees, will the Minister confirm that all allegations of misappropriation of government relief schemes intended for franchisees should be investigated as part of the inquiry into COVID by the COVID Commissioner? For those franchisees facing financial distress, will the Minister urge banks to show leniency and support? And will he commit to looking afresh at the lack of enforceable regulations governing franchisor conduct? A key lesson, Madam Deputy Speaker, from the Post Office scandal is we must not allow the sophisticated power of a corporate body or the impression created by an impressive balance sheet to persuade us to ignore the voices of less powerful individuals who speak out. Many franchisees have given up stable jobs. Some have taken out personal loans. Some remortgaged their homes. Yet they train staff, open stores, serve customers, and they're told by the big business that they're partners. But when the going gets rough, when the Commission cuts come with little warning, when franchisees' performance plummets due to decisions beyond their control, and when stores are repossessed without adequate notice, they're left out on their own, high and dry. No lifeline, no dialogue, just silence for the corporations they once trusted. I can't believe that this Minister doesn't feel as I do about corporate malpractice, about greedy, soulless, heartless firms who act irresponsibly and hide behind the high wall of their substance. Government has a duty not only to promote entrepreneurship and business, but to protect entrepreneurs and ensure businesses do not take an unfair advantage of their staff. We must call time on the era of corporate giants using legal structures not as a framework for partnership, but as a shield for avoidance, for avoiding their responsibility and their decency. Brands that trade on a reputation and public trust must be held accountable for the actions they take, which cause real harm. We must move away from globalist, faceless corporate model which has enriched a few, and towards a different kind of economic order, where we shorten supply lines, when we encourage small and medium-sized businesses, where we understand that economics must serve a civil purpose. I call it fraternal economics, where community and economic activity are bound together in a common cause. We can build that kind of economic future, but it requires government to know when to step forward, to support business, and to when to step back, not to suffocate entrepreneurship. That is a future that's within our grasp, but it will require this government, perhaps any government, to think afresh about the power balance between large, faceless businesses and those smaller entrepreneurs, those ordinary people, people like most of us, I guess, who simply want to get on and do the best for their family and their community. I know which side I'm on. I'm on the side of those people because I know they make so much difference in my constituency and across the whole of our kingdom. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Minister Gareth Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. In the usual way, I thank the Right Honourable Member for South Holland and the Deepings for tabling this debate. Having crossed swords with him when our positions were reversed, I approached this debate with a particular degree of wariness. Not least because he has assembled a very distinguished and cross-party group of members to participate in this debate. And as well as his own contribution, we heard from the Right Honourable Gentleman for Chingford, we've heard from my Honourable Friend for Stockport, the Honourable Gentleman for Boston, my Honourable Friend for Durham, and my other Honourable Friend here today from Reading as well. Each of them making important points. I do very much agree with, in particular, with some of the opening remarks that the Right Honourable Gentleman made about small and medium-sized businesses being very much the backbone of our communities, important and fundamental to the strength of each one of our constituencies. And we as a government are determined to do much more to support our SMEs going forward. It's why we will publish a strategy to support SMEs shortly, a point I think my Honourable Friend for Reading alluded to. The Honourable Gentleman was absolutely right, Right Honourable Gentleman was absolutely right in saying that we should do more as a country to celebrate our entrepreneurs and to champion their interests. They are brave, they are risk takers, they create wealth, and they make all our communities better and richer. And we are determined as a government to encourage more people to come forward as entrepreneurs, to take the risks to succeed and to grow businesses in our country. It's why we have already taken a number of measures to support SMEs, establishing a business growth service inspired by the US Small Business Administration. The Secretary of State for Business and Trade has already committed to do just that. That's why, too, we saw one of the outcomes of the spending review being a 2/3 increase in the capacity of the British Business Bank. The vast majority of that funding going to help tackle the considerable challenges that SMEs face in accessing the right forms of financial support too. And he raised, quite rightly, issues around procurement, access to public procurement for British SMEs. And I am very sympathetic to the need to open up public procurement for SMEs. Again, we will have more to say on that in the small business strategy when it is published shortly, and colleagues in the Cabinet Office are working very much in this space too. He also rightly raised, lastly, some of the legal issues that small and medium-sized businesses face in general terms too, and the difficulties many have when legal issues arise. Again, we will have more to say on that in the small business strategy shortly. He also, I thought, made, towards the end of his remarks, a powerful link to the appalling miscarriage of justice, the scandal of how the Post Office treated its sub-postmasters in the past. There are many, many lessons to learn from that scandal. Some of them I hope he will draw confidence from in terms of this government being determined to address them when he sees the green paper on the future of the Post Office that we are seeking to bring forward. And the whole House, I am sure, will appreciate the work that Sir Win Williams is doing as he draws his conclusions as to what went wrong in the scandal and what more we need to do to learn those lessons and to make sure nothing like that ever happens again. Give way to him.
The way he's responding, there's a close parallel, really, between the way the Post Office is constructed, the business arrangement, the connection between the independent post offices and the centre, and some of the other remarks I made. Would he therefore ensure that his small business strategy includes specifically something on franchising? It is a really important part of getting right our approach to regulation around the relationship between those smaller businesses and corporate giants.
Minister.
Well, he will forgive me, I have already given a flavour of some of what might be in the small business strategy. I will leave him to wait, if I may, a little longer before he sees the small business strategy in full. But I did want to come on to the substance of his concern in this debate. He rightly and understandably raised the experiences of a number of franchise operators who allege mistreatment and being badly let down by Vodafone during COVID. No one in this room will have failed to have been moved by their stories. I have read a number of those in terms of correspondence from colleagues across both sides of the House about those stories. There are, without question, some very serious allegations that are being levelled at Vodafone in this case. As he has alluded to, and as I'm sure he will understand, I am unable to comment on ongoing legal disputes. But I will, of course, respond on behalf of the government today as best I can, given the ongoing nature of the case. Until now, there has not been sustained concern about the quality or effectiveness of the self-regulation of franchises in general. However, I recognise that this particular case has raised concerns across the House, and I will track very carefully what happens in this case and the final outcome and conclusions that any court case might come to. As honourable members will no doubt be aware, franchising is growing in the UK, and it makes a big contribution to our economy, just over £19 billion annually, according to the latest British Franchise Association survey. The franchising industry is covered by the same general protections in law at the moment as other businesses, and I want to come on to some of those in a moment. But in addition, the franchising industry also effectively self-regulates itself through the British Franchise Association. There's a code of ethics and the Quality Franchise Association, which provides a code of conduct. On the whole, as the House, I will give way in just a second, on the whole, as the House will recognise, there are significant advantages of self-regulation in general, in terms of greater flexibility, responsiveness and lower costs. Let me give way to my friend.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I thank the Minister for giving way. Is he aware that my understanding of the franchisees is that Vodafone left the BFA and walked out of the self-regulatory framework and code of conduct that they had?
Well, if he will forgive me, I'm not going to comment on these particular circumstances of Vodafone and its relationship with franchisees in general, or those franchisees former franchisees that are bringing court action, but I note the comment that he has made. In terms of of course.
Can I thank the Minister for giving way? I have worked with him on a number of other issues in relation to his ministerial role, and he has always been helpful and proactive. Can I just ask him, as he's representing His Majesty's government, does he feel that there is a need to legislate on this particular issue, as the Code of Conduct doesn't go far enough, but also as the Honourable Member for Durham has just said, there might be cases of larger corporations opting in and out as and when it suits them?
Well, as I alluded to earlier, I recognise that this case has raised concerns across the House about the quality and effectiveness of both the legislation that governs franchisees and indeed other businesses, and the specific arrangements around franchisees and their relationships. As I say, up to now, we have not had significant representations that that the quality of regulation of franchises in particular is not adequate. But I recognise, as I've said, the concerns across the House that this particular case has brought up, and as a result, I will track very carefully how the court case unfolds. I was noting the advantages that on occasion self-regulation brings. There is also a freedom in terms of contracting. What that means is that both individuals and businesses have the right to enter into agreements and to set their own terms, free from unnecessary government interference. That freedom at the moment allows franchise agreements to be tailored to individual needs. It allows people to set up shop more easily on the high street or elsewhere with the power of a big brand behind them. Self-regulation, again, on the whole, also allows the franchise industry to set standards and guidelines based on deep industry-specific expertise. It allows the industry to adapt more quickly to market changes too. And it's my understanding that it's the franchise agreements which are the main instruments governing the relationship between franchisors and franchisees. Those agreements normally cover key issues such as fees, territory rights, contract duration, and dispute resolution mechanisms. The government, of course, encourages anyone entering a business contract, such as a franchise, to seek independent legal advice before agreeing to the terms and conditions laid out in those agreements. Having talked a little bit about self-regulation and its benefits, I did allude to earlier that there are existing protections in law which cover all businesses, including franchises. So, for example, under the Misrepresentation Act 1967, anyone who has entered into a contract as a result of misrepresentation may be able to rescind the contract and claim damages. Misrepresentation is a false statement by one party to another which induces that person to enter the contract. Ultimately, it would be for the courts to decide whether or not a misrepresentation had occurred and what the remedy would be. There are other forms of legislation too, like the Unfair Contract Terms Act, which may apply to business contracts. That references the application of reasonableness test, but that again is a matter for dedicated legal advice.
And he's absolutely right, of course. The contract law is well established and the business contracts are enforceable in the way that he sets out. But the problem with franchising is that it's a hierarchical relationship. And it's a hierarchical relationship which creates a kind of dependency. Because the franchisee is dependent on the larger business, there is an inbuilt advantage if that larger business is inclined to be permissive in the way they apply the terms of the contract, or indeed even to vary the terms of the contract. The parallel I made in my speech was with supermarkets and primary producers. The supermarkets have so much power, the primary producer is implicitly weakened in that commercial relationship.
Minister.
Well, I thought the right honourable gentleman made a very interesting speech with a series of interesting analogies, and I have noted those and the points that he has made. And as I've said, I will track this particular court case and its conclusions. And I always try to make myself available when honourable members and right honourable members want to discuss particular issues pertinent to my brief, and I leave that offer for the right honourable gentleman too as things unfold. I should stress again, Madam Deputy Speaker, that only the courts can really decide on the application of contractual terms, and it's absolutely right that affected businesses seek independent legal advice on the particular circumstances of their situation. As the Right Honourable Gentleman will be fully aware, legislation cannot prevent wrongdoing. It can deter and it can punish, but only after the event. It is important for companies, obviously, to conduct business fairly. We already have rules that encourage this, whether that's criminal offences of fraud, audit requirements, or prompt payment reporting, which is something that my department has begun to strengthen, and where we will again publish further proposals shortly. I'm sure the Right Honourable Gentleman will agree with me too that investors and the public expect and deserve access to truthful reporting from our most important businesses on their finances and related issues. This is critical for trust, and ultimately it's critical for economic growth. That is why, through the Audit and Corporate Governance Reform Bill, we are developing legislation to uphold standards and the independent scrutiny of companies' accounts while ensuring real accountability for company directors. Section 172 of the Companies Act already requires company directors to frame regard in their decision-making to a wide range of stakeholder interests. That includes the impact of the company's operations on the wider community. It also requires directors to have regard to the desirability of the company maintaining a reputation for high standards of business conduct. This requirement applies to a company's business transactions, including treatment of franchisees. Large companies must report annually on how their directors have complied with these requirements. Taken together, the Section 17 duty helps to provide assurance that companies are run responsibly and that directors are mindful of the impact of their decision-making beyond the company and its shareholders. The Right Honourable Gentleman touched on the subject of additional regulation of franchises and the wider franchise model. As he will know, this government is dedicated to implementing an ambitious regulatory